Welcome back to the Narayana IS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottavar, and today we are going to deal with the most important news articles from The Hindu and Indian Express as part of our daily news analysis. Now, before we start, one quote for all of you: stop wishing and start doing. There are many students, many people who dream of becoming something. They wish they could have become something like an IS officer, IPS officer, or anything, but they don't perform their actions. They don't do what is actually required to become that thing, and they keep on dreaming. So don't become that dreamer. Become the one who does that thing, or one who goes for that thing, achieves it. You can achieve it only by doing stuff, not by just dreaming about it or wishing. Okay, now before we start, notification from Narayana's Academy about the admissions. So our 1 year course and 2 year course is active. You can take the admission. You can go for the website link and you can go look at all the information, all the details. You must be getting that QR code through which you can get all the details regarding our 1 year as well as 2 year course. The details are also mentioned over here. Let's say for GS and CSAT classes, 800 hours of classes are there. 200 hours of classes for current affairs specifically given. You'll be provided with micro schedule, all the testing mechanism, prelims test, mock test, mains mock test. Everything is part of this course. Okay. Now, as part of our daily news analysis, today we are going to discuss four most important articles, and these are the most relevant articles for your examination. The first article talks about Beijing India Report. Now, this article specifically talks about the relationship between climate change and women, climate change and gender inequality. So, actually, it's been almost 30 years since the Beijing Declaration came into picture. And here we are looking at the issues that we are still facing, the policy gaps that are present in terms of India's governance with respect to all these things, with respect to the gender inequality that still exists. We'll understand that part, and this article is highly important for your upcoming mains examination. Okay. Then the second article, DRDO does release trials of long range glide bomb. So here this glide bomb is very important. It's a new kind of bomb which can glide. So very interesting, we'll understand that. Third article is dire efforts. This is actually part of editorial in The Hindu, which specifically talks about the process of de-extinction. So earlier we heard that species are getting extincted, or extinction process is going on. Now we are talking about the reversal of that process through de-extinction. So we'll understand that part. And the last article is about industrial output growth. So there's an index called IIP, okay, index of industrial production. So we'll understand what all that production index is all about, why we study about it, and what this exactly says, because it's talking about some slowdown in the industries with the 2.9% growth rate. So all these four articles are highly important, I would say, and we'll study each one of them one after the other. Now, just a second. Okay. Now, the first article, Beijing India Report as Milestone and Opportunity. Now, what all you should understand for mains examination? Gender climate nexus. What is the relation of the gender part with the climate change? That is the major issue that we face right now. Okay. Then we should know Beijing Declaration. We should know Beijing plus 30 India Report. Okay. Now, please read this previous year question asked in the year 2019. What are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? Now, this is a very broad question which is asking about the problems or challenges faced by women in India. Now, one of that problem could be due to the climate change. The major problem is the gender injustice, gender inequality. And one of the factor behind that could be climate change, which we are going to study in this particular article. Okay. So here we are saying in the year 2025, we have completed total 30 years. 30 years. For what? For this Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Now, this declaration came in the year 1995. And this declaration is very important. We call it a landmark judgment, not judgment, a landmark initiative or a landmark commitment taken by almost all the countries at the global level, where we all committed saying that we are going to bring gender equality. Okay. Now, every country is influenced by this Beijing Declaration, and although it is not legally binding, but countries have made some commitments. So they have to show some kind of progress. There is some moral obligation on every country. So that's why we are saying we are reviewing what all we have done in the last 30 years. It's been 30 years. Now we want to check in last 30 years, whatever we committed in this Beijing Declaration, have we done something on that track or we have not achieved anything as such till now? Okay. Now every country made commitments. Every country was expected to come up with some kind of results in the same direction. Okay. So we are reviewing it right now. And to review, we brought this Beijing plus 30 report in the year 2024. Okay. This report talks about many important things like health, education, women's safety. But there is one problem. This report has received some criticism. So this report is specifically talking about a criticism against the government or the policies. It says that there is an angle of relationship between gender issue and the climate change. And this link is not being mentioned or is not being worked on by the government authorities. That is something we call concern. Okay. Now, first of all, we should go with the basic part first so that we understand things in a structured manner. First of all, we need to know this Beijing Declaration very clearly. I said in the year 1995, this Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, this thing came into picture. So there was a conference held in Beijing, which is in China. It was the fourth World Conference on Women. So it was a very massive kind of event. It was attended by almost 189 countries. Okay, more than 17,000 delegates were part of it. There were so many NGOs who attended this conference, almost 30,000 NGOs. So you can understand a massive event. And it was organized by United Nations, especially we can say UN Women and UN Commission on the Status of Women, CSW. These two were the main organizational units. And there was a core message put forward by them. They said that women's rights are human rights, and that's why we need to protect women's rights. And first thing first, that we need to bring equality, gender equality. Okay. Now, this declaration, when it was signed or made, or countries made the commitment, they laid out a plan. So they said that we will focus on 12 critical areas which are areas of concern with respect to women. One of that includes women and poverty, education and training of women, women and health, violence against women, women and armed conflict, women and economy, women in power and decision making, institutional mechanisms for the advancement of women, human rights of women, women and the media, women and the environment, and the girl child. See, these are the 12 critical areas which are mentioned very clearly in this declaration. Okay. Now, this declaration is not legally binding on any country as such. Okay. Now, countries are expected to work on it. Okay. It acts like a guidance. Yes, it acts like a guidance or a guiding mechanism for policy making in almost every single country. Those countries will do something with respect to these dimensions. And it was expected that every 5 years, these countries are coming up, are expected to come up with some kind of review. Let's say whatever progress you have made with respect to any of these dimensions, every 5 year you will come up with the review mechanism, or let's say you'll come up with a report which will talk about what progress you have made. So in 5 years, if it comes, they named it, let's say, Beijing plus 5. Here we have mentioned. After 5 years, they came up with a report, Beijing plus 10, then Beijing plus 20, likewise. And now because we are completing 30 years, so Beijing plus 30. Okay. Now every country does that. Our focus will remain simply on India. So India has also come up with a report and we call it Beijing plus 30 India report. Okay. Now this report is specifically released by National Alliance of Women, NAWO, and this is not a government body as such. Okay. Now this is an alliance of agencies or NGOs who are working in this particular field, and they were looking at all those 12 critical areas. Now if you see the report, they talk about good things whatever government has done till now, and here they say that government has certainly done some good things. Let's say if we talk about some good initiatives brought by government, one of that is national policy for women, which was brought in the year 2016. Then there is a very famous scheme in India, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, or Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, which was brought by government. Or there's a scheme, Poshan Abhiyan, for the nutrition. So when you look at all these schemes or laws or policies, it is clear that government is certainly taking some actions to ensure that they are coming up with some progress with respect to all these major areas mentioned in the Beijing Declaration. But see, these are good things. But there is one criticism which is coming from the civil society or the NGOs. They're saying that there is a very strong connection between gender and climate change. I'll discuss what is that connection. But right now, just understand these civil society agencies are saying that there is a nexus, there is a connection. And still, government is not looking at things this way, that women or girls, they face some climate related problems and they face it disproportionately. Males do not face it much, but females are facing more climate related problems. So government needs to consider this aspect which they are not doing. Okay, that's why this dimension is something we are focusing right now. So gender climate nexus. First thing, climate change does not affect all the people equally. It affects women more. In the women also, women who are living in the rural area, women who belong to the tribal community, women who belong to the poor households, these women face more risk and they are more vulnerable. See, they do not have enough resources with them, and to cope up with the climate related shocks, they are not in a position to handle climate change related shocks. How? If I have to give some examples, let's say one dimension could be your health and well-being. Let's say right now, because of climate change, what we are observing is the global temperature is increasing. We are observing global warming. So there's a rise in heat, because of which all the atmospheric patterns are changing. Let's say rainfall is supposed to come in the monsoonal season, but now we see erratic rainfall. In the days when rainfall is not expected, that day also we'll see rainfall. And on the days when rainfall is supposed to be there, we don't see it. So there is some instability, or rather we can say unexpected nature of rainfall, unexpected nature of heat. Now when there is high heat, erratic rainfall, because of this what we observe is some diseases will start spreading, diseases like malaria, dengue, etc. Now this is one angle which is going to affect people. But if you look at climate change overall, because of climate change there will be many disasters, right? Sudden rainfall, heavy rainfall, which may cause some kind of flooding, or in some areas there will be drought like condition. Now when such disasters take place, you observe one thing: women face more challenges than the men. So let's say if I talk about some pregnant women, or women facing some kind of health disease or health related problems. Let's say they want to go for deliveries, or some kind of problem is there. Now they'll face more problems because of flooding, because of droughts. Now they need some access to the healthcare, but because of the disaster, they can't access those healthcare facilities, right? So the deliveries which are supposed to take place, they will not be taken up in institutions like the healthcare institution. Rather, they'll be taken at home. That will be very unsafe. Then, many a times, health services collapse because of disasters, and this affects women as well as children a lot. So this is one dimension which we can think of. Now the other dimension is livelihood and economic vulnerability. Look at the economic side. So if you look at women, most of the women, they are working in the informal sector, or let's say many women are even working in agriculture. And see, climate change affects agriculture very badly. Even when we say informal sector, climate change is going to affect this informal sector very badly. So women are vulnerable here. In terms of agriculture, let's say because there is more rainfall or less rainfall or whatever, the crops fail. And when the crops fail, women are losing their income because many women are part of agriculture sector. Now, one problem with women is they are doing some kind of unpaid work. They're doing work, but that work is unpaid. So let's say they're cooking at their home, they're taking care of the children. Now, this is not considered an official job as such or a work which should be paid, but they're doing it. And because of all this, they're not able to gain financial freedom and overall freedom. Now, this is one angle of economy or livelihood, which is worsened because of climate change, right? Then, water, energy, and sanitation part. See, if you look at many villages in India or in the world also, women have extra responsibility. If water is needed at home, or for the energy you need firewood, then the responsibility lies on women. So, if the responsibility is on women, and now we are observing climate change phenomena, droughts taking place, there's deforestation, it's difficult to get the water. You have to go for longer distance, and now this responsibility is with the women. So it becomes hard for them. It becomes dangerous for them. Okay. So overall, we see this is how climate change is affecting them. And when they are going for long distance, there are chances of some kind of attack, some kind of risk of violence will always be there, right? So this is third dimension. Then fourth is about education and social roles. Now, because of climate change, some kind of disaster will take place. And when this disaster will strike you, first thing that will happen over here is girls are going to get drop out from the school. First of all, they're not expected to go outside. Second thing, they have to help the family. The first responsibility, see, even if the male child is there, the expectation will be there towards girls that they will have to drop out and help the family. And that's why we say whenever there is any kind of disaster, there is more chance of women facing the problem as in terms of education. Now when they leave the education part, there's no formal education. In that case, many a times early marriage becomes very common for girls. Or many a times when families have to migrate from one place to other, because of some kind of disaster, they have to migrate, they have to go to other place. In that time period, we have many a times observed trafficking taking place, human trafficking taking place. So women are facing all these problems. The fifth is gender based violence. See, climate change has major role to play in terms of violence against women. The studies have claimed this very clearly, that whichever family or whichever population is facing some kind of climate stress, there you will observe domestic violence increasing, sexual assault increasing. So there was a recent report which claimed that if there is 1 degree of rise in the temperature, the global temperature, just 1 degree, I am saying, in that case, you'll observe that the gender based violence will increase by at least 6%. At least 6%. So, this is the nexus that I'm talking about. That climate change is affecting women very badly. And Indian policymakers have not focused on this aspect till now. This is what is being said over here. So this India's Beijing 30 report, right? It says that we have overlooked this gender climate link, and that's why we need to focus on this aspect. Then there is one angle that we have some traditional knowledge. We have some women in the tribal areas, or let's say in rural areas, who have got some kind of traditional knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge. They can help us with something. They have some wisdom, but we are not utilizing it. So if you want to conserve our species, or you do want to do farming, or you want to use your forest in a sustainable manner, they can help us with this. But policymakers are not taking help of these women. They're not even focusing on them. This is one thing which is highlighted in the report. Second, climate disconnect in the climate plans. See, government comes up with many plans. Let's say India is having one plan called National Action Plan on Climate Change, NAPCC, very famous plan. At the state level also we have such plans. But the problem is, these plans do not have any gender specific strategy. They come up with plans for entire population, but when you have one specific gender which is more vulnerable, you should have specific policies for them. But right now we do not have any such thing in India which is being highlighted over here. See here, gender disaggregated data is also not available with us. See, don't you think that we need some data which specifically talks about women? We need some separate data to understand how much they are affected, how much help they really require. All this is actually required, and that we need to do. Okay, so these are the dimensions you can directly utilize in your answers for means. Now, till now, whatever we have studied is a criticism of government or the policies with respect to this climate and women. Now, there is another dimension which we say that women can act as climate solution agents. That means we are saying we can utilize women, or rather, women can play the role as a leader to solve this problem of climate change. So, we have these links wherein they can help us. Till now, we thought that women are victims, they are the most vulnerable. How they can help? Now, see, look at the rural and tribal women, or the women who are at the grassroots level. Many women have come up with some initiative which goes against, or which is rather comes up with a strategy to curb the climate change issues. So let's say we have this seed bank in Telangana brought by women. We have watershed management in Nagpur, agroforestry practices in Malnad region, some self-help groups led by women. There are many self-help groups which are working in many areas. Let's say water management, preserving forest, and many other things. So let's say some are buying this solar stuff and going for producing the solar energy. Some are going for some waste recycling. All these things are happening. All these are good examples to deal with climate change. And who is leading? Women are leading. Okay. Then women in energy and innovation. Now this is one very interesting theme, that when it comes to energy generation, so there are some programs which are very famous. Globally, these programs are very famous, wherein if you empower women, then women will come up with the green energy. So there is this project called Solar Sister, Barefoot College. These are very famous initiatives. So here what is happening in this solar system? This is from Africa, sub-Saharan African region. So here women are trained to distribute the solar lanterns and clean stoves instead of using the traditional ones. Or if you look at this Barefoot College initiative, which is from our Rajasthan. So here we train the rural women from India and all other countries wherever we have access to, wherein women can become solar engineers. Now, even if they do not have enough education, their literacy level is low, still they can become solar engineers through this initiative called Barefoot College Initiative. So it clearly shows these programs, they are anyway reducing the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So we are contributing in the in solving this climate crisis. But this also improves the health of women. It saves their money, it empowers them. So this aspect you need to understand. That's why we are saying women can act as the agents of climate solution. Now there's one dimension you should know, the legal constitutional aspect, which all articles come into picture when it comes to the climate issues, when it comes to women and gender justice. So you can read this. This is not something new that I'm telling you. Article 21, we all know, right to life and personal liberty. Now this includes right to a clean, safe environment, right? So similarly, we have Article 14 and 15, Article 23, Article 39, Article 51A, 244, etc. Now, if we have problems, we must have some solutions. So we come up with some recommendations for people as well as for the government. So more focus will be there on the government side. So when it comes to the government and institutional level, we have to come up with strategies which are focused on women. So gender specific, gender transformative strategies are required when it comes to climate change or climate action plans. So when you are coming up with any plan, focus on this gender specific plan. First of all, you need to come up with data which is very gender specific, separate data for women. You need to come up with that. Whenever you are leading any community project, you should give opportunity for women to come up there. So women have to lead, or women have to be part of it. Okay. And when you're providing any kind of social safety, let's say you're providing some subsidy to people, look at women. So let's say you have some cash transfer scheme, some kind of climate insurance, then focus on women, focus on the vulnerable women over here. Okay. And then we have panchayats at the local level. In those panchayats, women should be part of decision making. If they are part of it, then at government and institutional level, we can ensure this linkage will help us. Okay. Second, localized community based action. Localized community based action. That means what we can do is we can come up with some local body plans, and we can come up with some resources which will help us. See, sometimes we have technological dimensions wherein we can use some GIS mapping. We can use those technologies to track the water stress or any climate related issues at the local level. And we can bring in some women groups or some SHG groups wherein we can solve all these problems at the local level. And here, role of women should be met or should be ensured. Then we can bring in some private sector also. Is private sector important? Yes, it is important because government will not be able to do everything. So we need private sector which involves women. So we need businesses, let's say some green businesses there, a business which is working in the field of sustainable development, or they have a startup which we call as green startup. So if there is a startup which is led by women, this is something we can focus on. Okay, so we can promote these sectors like renewable energy, waste management, climate smart agriculture. All these can be promoted. Now how government can promote? Government can come up with some subsidies, some programs, some tax holidays, or some funds. Let's say we can make this green transition fund, and this fund can focus on women leadership in the private sector. Okay. Then we have climate specific gender action plans. So we said government makes plans to deal with climate change, but here gender action plans are required. Gender action plans. So focus on gender. Include women in the traditional, take their traditional knowledge, include them in the leadership role, bring innovation. Even when we are going for any kind of planning, at that time also you can focus on this gender aspect. So if you do all these things, we can say that we can deal with this problem, or we can deal with this linkage which exists. Okay, and whatever government has done till now with respect to those Beijing declaration and commitments, we can add up and we can ensure that we complete our commitments over here. Okay, so this was your first article of the day. Now the second article, this one, DRDO does release trials of long range glide bomb. So you should know what is this glide bomb exactly, and you should know briefly about DRDO. This is highly important for your prelims. More than the mains, it is more important for prelims. Now you can read this previous year question asked in the year 2014. I'll give you 5 seconds. Please read this question so that you can get an idea of what kind of questions are asked from the similar kind of theme. Okay. Done? So the question talks about Agni 4 missile, and they're specifically asking about the factual details related to this missile. So it's a surface to surface missile, liquid propellant, deliver 1 ton nuclear warheads, etc. So you can understand, you should know about those factual details when it comes to any missile or any such technology. Now what is the news? So recently there's this glide bomb which is being tested by DRDO. Now DRDO is an important organization in India. Now we should know, what do we mean by glide bomb? Long range glide bomb. So you can imagine there's a fighter plane which is flying in the sky, and from a height they are going to release a bomb. Now this is the traditional method used by the Air Force. But this is for your ordinary bombs. Now you can think about a new bomb which is a bit smart. In case the bomb is falling, now this bomb can glide very smoothly in the air. It can glide for almost 100 kilometers. So let's say your target is 100 kilometers away from this location where your aircraft is. And right now, if the bomb falls, this bomb will exactly go 100 kilometers away, and it is going to attack the target very, very precisely, very, very accurately. Now this is the speciality of a glide bomb. And when we say long range, so here because it can go somewhere around 100 kilometers, that's why we are calling it long range glide bomb. Okay, and this bomb is recently being tested by DRDO. So they have also named it Gaurav. Okay, the name Gaurav is given to this glide bomb. Okay, now successfully the trial has been done. So maybe in few years we'll come up with many such bombs. The government will give the approval for production, and maybe in future we can sell this to other countries too. Now that's a different story altogether. Now as far as the factual part is concerned, what is the type and class? We can say it is 1000 kg class precision guided glide bomb. Please understand the weight of this bomb itself. It's not a small bomb. 1000 kg weight. So you can understand it's tough to make such a smart bomb. Then it is developed by DRDO. Now DRDO has different units like this Research Center Imarat, Armament Research and Development Establishment, and this Integrated Test Range Chandipur. So all these have played some role in making this thing. Okay. Then if we talk about the range, 100 kilometers, which we have already discussed. Industry collaboration, now this is not so important, but you can say that industry contribution is there. There are so many companies who have involved in this. There are so many MSCs also, MSMEs, who have worked to make this particular bomb. So in the design aspect or in the production aspect, anywhere, they have played some role is what we can say with this. Okay. Now, operational role, yes, we can say Indian Air Force is going to use it. This is going to enhance the capability of Indian Air Force. And it has strategic significance because for our Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, this one is going to play an important role. See, we are saying that when we are producing such bombs, when we are producing or making such technologies to make such bombs on our own, because DRDO is working our defense ministry, we are doing it on our own. This shows that India is strategically moving, wherein we are making it for ourselves. We don't depend on other countries for any such technology. Now this, when you do not depend on other countries, first of all, your import your import challenge is reduced. You don't need to depend on other countries, you don't need to pay them, and you make yourself confident with this. Okay, that's why we are saying it helps in our Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Now other initiatives brought by this DRDO, there are so many such programs like this Tejas, Pinaka, this glide bomb, the anti-satellite missile under Mission Shakti, hypersonic technology demonstrator vehicle. All these are good examples of developments made by DRDO. So you can understand how important DRDO is right now, because they are coming up with so many new things. So you should have basic idea about DRDO, the factual part we said. So for example, it was established in the year 1958. So earlier there was an organization called Defense Science Organization. So this unit and there were some other research units which got merged and formed this DRDO. Its headquarters is located in New Delhi and its parent ministry is obviously Ministry of Defense. The core objective of DRDO is to make India self-reliant when it comes to weapons, when it comes to defense. So they say that develop indigenous defense technologies and system to make India self-reliant, or what we can simply call Atmanirbhar. Okay, there are so many missiles made by DRDO like Agni missile, Prithvi missile, Nag missile, BrahMos. BrahMos is a joint venture between India and Russia, right? And here also DRDO is playing important role. Now, this part, the key wings of DRDO, you should have a brief idea about it. They have this research center Imarat, which we said, which specializes in missile technologies. Then they have this armament research and development establishment, and they have aeronautical development establishment. These are the main organs or main wings of DRDO, which play important role in entire working of DRDO. So we can't neglect that part at all. Okay, so this is all about this news. You should know these brief things, you should know about DRDO, and you should have certain idea about what this bomb is specifically doing or how it is going to help Indian Air Force. Clear? Now, this next article, dire efforts. I said this article is about de-extinction. This is a new process which we are observing, de-extinction. Now, to understand this, first let's look at any previous year question which is related to this thing. So we have a question on depletion of mangroves. Please read this question. Main question, depletion of mangroves. Now, similar such questions you can observe even in preliminary examination, wherein UPSC is going to focus on species which are either getting reduced or which are on the verge of extinction. Maybe after few years you will not see that species. So we say endangered species, we say critically endangered species, likewise. Okay, now what we study right now is a kind of process or experiment that is going on to bring this de-extinction. So just imagine if we are in a position to bring back some animals which were once existing on this planet. Let's say look at dinosaurs. Can you make dinosaurs again? This is something you need to think of, because dinosaurs do not exist right now. Extinction process has already taken place. Now we are saying we are going for de-extinction, the reversal process. So there's a company called Colossal Biosciences. So what they are doing is they are working on a project of de-extinction. So what they are doing is they are using some tools with respect to the biotechnology or genetics, and they are trying to bring back the extinct animals. How they are going to do this? This is what we need to know with this de-extinction process. So de-extinction, process of resurrecting extinct species using advanced genetic technology. It is also known as Lazarus science. Lazarus science. So this is just a name. Actually, there's a story from Bible from which this name Lazarus came into picture. So Lazarus was actually brought back to life, and that's why right now what we are doing is de-extinction. This is also similar to the same process. So here we are reaching into the past and trying to recreate that life which has already lost. And this scientists are doing with some methods. Now, some methods, when I say, there's one method called cloning. So what you will do is you'll take the genetic setup of an animal. So let's say there was an animal, you have some cells of that animal, some cells which are preserved. If you take that cells, from those cells you'll get all the genetic setup, all the DNA. You can use that DNA and make a new clone of that animal, an animal which looks exactly similar to that animal. This is called cloning. Now this is one thing that we can do right now. Okay, the second method that we can use is selective breeding. So what you'll do is you'll look at some related species. Let's say if you talk about horse, related species would be donkey or zebra. Those are related species. So similarly, in this selective breeding, you will take related species and you're going to go for some breeding which will be very selective. And through this breeding, through the natural breeding, we can come up with the animals or species which have got extinct. Now that's a long process. But there is one more method which is very easy or relatively easy, we can say. This is called using genome editing. So what you can do is you can get the exact genetic code of that particular species, and now you can take the related species and make changes in the DNA. Let's say you want to make a horse. So what you will do is you will take the DNA of zebra and you'll make some changes in that DNA. You'll go for gene editing. There's a technology called CRISPR-Cas9 using which we can do this. And by these changes in the DNA, you can make horse from the zebra. Okay, so this is very interesting. So all these methods, these are the major methods which are being used. Mostly this genome editing which is being used over here. And this is being used for this de-extinction process. Okay. Now, right now, when we are talking about this de-extinction, one species on which this experiment is going on right now is this dire wolf. Dire wolf is a species on which this experiment is being carried out. Okay. Now you should know about this dire wolf. Now here you see, you can imagine the size of this dire wolf. As compared to the normal wolf, this dire wolf is having size which is way larger. Okay. Now this species was once existing on this planet. So in the North America or the South America during this Pleistocene epoch. So if you go back somewhere around 2.5 lakh years back, from that time period till the 10,000 years time period, we can say. In that time period, this animal was existing in North America and South America. It was big. It was very strong kind of predator. Very muscular, we can say. As compared to this grey wolf or this husky dog, obviously it is very muscular. And obviously the size clearly shows that it used to hunt the big animals like horses or bisons. Now it looks very similar to the grey wolf, that is the wolf category, right? And here the name is also given as dire wolf. So the wolf name we are using. But interesting thing is, it is not a close relative of this grey wolf. Rather, it is not a good relative of this wolf as such. This is interesting fact that we should. So in the process of evolution, it happens that one species will be there, then there will be some mutations, there will be some changes in your genes, and new species will form, and every species goes for its own evolution, its own path. That's how it goes on. So a separate branch came into picture and this dire wolf came into picture. Now it has a genetic setup which is relatively different, and that's the reason when these scientists are going for this experiment to bring back this dire wolf, they are finding it difficult, because to get that genetic setup, it's difficult. To do this gene editing, that is difficult, that's challenging for them. But still, if they are doing it, let's be hopeful that they will complete their project. Okay, and if we could do this with respect to this animal, maybe we could do this for many animals or many species, we can say. Okay, now the next is the next article is about industrial production. So industrial output growth slows to 2.9% in February. Now here you should know about index of industrial production. Index of industrial production. Now this is important for prelims as well as mains to understand the trend in our economy. Now you see, there's a prelims question, index of 8 core industries. Which one of the following is given the highest weight? Very easy question asked in the year 2015. From this you can understand that this index is highly important. Now this index is saying that there is some trend in which we are observing there is a slowdown in our industries. 2.9% growth we are observing, and we are seeing this growth is very less. We expected the growth rate of 4%, and what we observe is just 2.9%. Okay. Now first of all, we need to know about this index, otherwise we'll not understand what this news is all about. Okay, we need to know what do we mean by this index of industrial production. So it's an index, it's an indicator. So it is going to show something to us. It is going to indicate the health of India's manufacturing or our industrial base. When we look at our economy, the industrial part, how is it working? That you will understand. So you can look at factories, you can look at mines, you can look at power plants, whether their production is increasing or decreasing, there is a slowdown or they are going really good. Everything will be very clear from this index of industrial production. Okay. Now, when you look at this index, you will see a few things. First and important thing is the base year. So the base year for this index is 2011 to 12. Now, what is base year? Now, this is the year of which data we are going to take as the constant for us, or as a reference point. So whatever production took place in this year, now we will compare our data with this data. So let's say we are comparing our data of 2024, 2025. So we'll compare this data with this data. So in comparison, we'll see whether we have growth or not. So what we'll do is, for this 2011-12, we'll give number 100. And now let's compare. If the production is 116, now we say that there is 16% growth when it comes to industrial production. Okay. So this is how base year is going to be important. Then who publishes it? Central Statistical Organization is going to come up with this index every month. So in the year, 12 times you will observe this data coming into picture. And this one, Central Statistical Organization, is part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, in short, MOSPI. Okay, this is the factual part. Many times UPSC asks about the ministry, and you should know about the ministry. Now, how is this IIP index calculated? How do they calculate? How do they come up with this data? So they have different methods. Let's say one method is to go for sectors. So they'll look at different sectors. So there are three major sectors involved over here. One is your manufacturing sector. And manufacturing is very important. It is having the weightage of 79%, 79.36, right? Then you have mining and quarrying. 10% and electricity 10%. So this much weightage is given. Manufacturing is obviously the major part, right? When these sectors, these three sectors, they are performing well, we say that this index is showing good results. This index is performing good. But if the index is showing some slowdown, that means these three industries are not doing really good. Okay. So this is one method to categorize all the industries and come up with data. Other method to calculate would be to go for a different classification based on how you are going to use products in an economy. So let's say we have some things which we call as primary goods, some basic raw materials. We have some capital goods. So let's say we have some machineries using which we are making different products. So those machineries are your capital goods. Then there are some intermediate goods, like some process will be going on for production, and in that production, if there is an intermediate stage and we are there, some kind of production is taking place, those are called intermediate goods. Then some products are called as consumer durables, like let's say I'm buying a TV or car. Those are called as consumer durables because once I buy it, I'm going to use it for a long duration. And there are other products which are consumer non-durables, like food, like soap, any such thing, or clothes that I'm going to buy frequently. So in this manner also we can classify our industries and come up with the data. Okay, these two methods can be used over here. Now see the focus area. When you look at the index, this index focuses on some core industries. Some industries are considered as major industries. We call them core industries. So there are total 8 core industries. Why they are considered core? Because they are the foundation of our economy. Only these 8 core industries, they make up somewhere around 40% of the total index. So the index depends more or less on these 8 industries. That's why we are giving so much importance to these 8 industries which we call as core industries. So this includes your electricity, steel industry, refinery products, crude oil, coal industry, cement industry, natural gas, fertilizers. Okay, these are the 8 core industries. Now here you should remember which one is more important, which one is having more weightage. So refinery products is having the highest weightage and the lowest weightage is given to fertilizers. Okay, this is the factual part which we can try to remember. Okay, so this is all about this index of industrial production, important for your upcoming prelims examination. Now, we said in the beginning that there is a slowdown that we are observing in our industries because we expected the growth rate of 4% and we see 2.9%. That clearly shows on monthly basis we can observe that somewhere there is a slowdown in our industries. This is how we come to know about the trend. This is how even government comes to know about the trend. Okay. Now, let's try some practice questions. In the context of rising climate vulnerabilities, examine the significance of integrating gender perspectives into climate policy. Suggest a multi-level roadmap for achieving gender-responsive climate governance in India. So to start with the answer, you can talk about the Beijing Declaration, or you can talk about the 30 years completion, or you can talk about this Beijing plus 30 India report. So this report you can start or introduce your answer. Now, after setting that context, first we'll talk about significance of gender integration. Why gender integration is required? How we are forgetting that nexus angle, that you can mention. Or you can mention about the problems women are facing. Let's say there is unpaid work, the care work that they are doing. All these things you can mention. Then what kind of gaps that are existing at the policy level? So we are making some plans at national level. We don't have any gender segregated data or disaggregated data. We don't have, and we don't have women for decision making. So all these gaps you can clearly mention and then give a roadmap, give some way forward, which we have discussed in detail. So what policy, at policy level, what should we do? At community level, what we should do? At legal and institutional level, and for the private sector perspective, what all we can do. This is how you can mention the roadmap as way forward, and then conclude by saying that although women are victims, but also women can play the major role. They can lead to solve this entire crisis or all these problems. Okay, this is how we can conclude. Now, some of the questions from yesterday's daily news analysis. So, this one is related to National Investigating Agency. It was established under an executive order in 2009. Now, focus on these things. Whenever you try to answer, please read the statement twice so that you get clarity whether the statement is right or wrong. There can be a trap. It's true that it came in 2009, but it did not come with any executive order as such. There was a law passed by the parliament, and then this NIA was made. So first statement becomes wrong. As soon as first statement becomes wrong, B, 2 and 3 becomes your answer. I don't need to read even the second and third statement. Okay. Then, with reference to right to information in India, RTI is fundamental right derived from Article 19 Clause 1. That's true. Political parties are excluded from the purview of RTI Act even though they receive public funds. Now, this is absolutely wrong. This is not the case. Then RTI Act mandates that exempted information related to national security or diplomatic interests must be disclosed after 20 years without exception. See, there will always be some kind of exceptions in the laws. So you can't neglect that aspect, right? So 2 is wrong, 3 is wrong, only 1 is the right answer over here. Fourth, PM Poshan. It provides hot cooked meals to children from pre-primary Balvatika to class 8 in government and government aided school. That is true. Cost sharing pattern between center and states is 75 to 25. Now this is wrong. It is generally 60 is to 40, right? And the scheme includes provisions for social audits and annual health checkups of beneficiaries. That's true. So the second statement is wrong. So 1 and 3 is the right answer. Okay. Now we have some questions for you to practice. You will get a link in the description box. Please click on the link and you can solve these, you can attempt these questions directly. Okay, you can pause the screen and read the question. One question on DRDO. Okay, then second question which you can read. Again, you can pause the screen and read the question. This one is on index of industrial production. Very easy question, very factual, but you can easily manage to answer it. And third question on de-extinction process. Okay, please pause the screen and attempt. You'll get the answers for these questions tomorrow in the daily news analysis. I hope you understood all these articles. Thank you so much for joining. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.